The cold morning looked ordinary, but something in the air felt different, almost heavy, almost weighting. Mara sensed it without knowing why. Maybe it was the way the wind paused between breaths, or the strange stillness on the street where snow usually danced freely. She didn't realize fate was already turning toward her, quietly, step by step. She tightened her grip on her daughter's small hands, their matching boots crunching in the snow beside her. Ember tugged at her sleeve, pointing at the way the sunlight made tiny stars on the ice. Sky giggled softly, trying to catch snowflakes in her palm. Their innocence warmed her, reminding her why she had survived the hardest years of her life. She bent down to fix Sky's scarf, brushing a snowflake from her cheek. That was when she felt it, not heard it, felt it. A slow car approaching, its engine too gentle, too cautious, as if the driver was afraid of what they might find. The sound crept into the silence like a memory returning after years of being locked away. Mara didn't look up immediately. She never expected anyone from her past to appear here. Not after 5 long years, not after everything she rebuilt from nothing. She focused on her girls, on their warmth, on the life she had created with her own strength. But the car kept slowing, closer, and then stopping. A window lowered, and the moment she finally looked toward that car, the world around her seemed to hold its breath. Because the eyes staring back at her were the last eyes she ever expected to see again. For a heartbeat, Mara thought her mind was tricking her. She blinked once, twice, yet the same familiar face remained behind the glass. Alan, the man who once told her she had ruined his plans, the same man who walked away without looking back. He looked different now, less certain, less proud, almost shaken. His eyes moved from her to the 2 small girls beside her, girls with the same deep brown eyes he saw in the mirror every morning. Something inside him froze, as if time itself refused to move until he understood what he was seeing. Mara felt her pulse quicken, but not from fear, from something far more complicated. The life she had built had no space for the past, yet here it stood, staring at her through the lowered window of a car far too expensive for this quiet street. She straightened her shoulders, steady as the snow beneath her boots. Ember stepped closer to her leg, curious but cautious. Sky squeezed her hand, sensing a change even she couldn't name. Mara gently pressed their hands, silently reminding them she was here, she was strong, and nothing could shake that. Alan opened his mouth, but no words came out. For the first time, he looked like the one caught unprepared, the one searching for clarity. There was something almost fragile in his stare, something Mara had never seen before. The silence stretched between them, long enough to feel heavy. And just when Mara thought he might look away, he stepped out of the car. As if the truth standing before him finally demanded answers he could no longer ignore. Alan closed the car door slowly, as if he feared any sudden movement might make the moment vanish. The snow crunched under his shoes, each step sounding louder than it should on an empty winter street. Mara stood still, her daughters holding her hands, their curious eyes shifting between the stranger and their mother. He stopped a few feet away, unable to come closer, yet unable to step back. His gaze kept drifting toward the girls, first Ember, then Sky, searching their faces like someone piecing together a truth too large to accept all at once. Mara felt her heart tighten, but she kept her expression calm, almost unreadable. "Are they—" He tried to speak, but his voice cracked, barely audible over the soft wind. The question hung unfinished, trembling in the space between them. Mara didn't answer, not yet. Not when the past still echoed through her mind. The office, the cold words, the moment he chose his plans over her, over them. She had rebuilt her life from that day, thread by thread. She wouldn't let him tear through it with one question. Ember shifted, peeking up at him, with the bold curiosity only a child possessed. Sky leaned closer to Mara, her small fingers curling tighter around her mother's. Their innocence made the moment feel even heavier, as though the world had paused to see what would happen next. Alan swallowed hard. "Mara, please." It was the quiet plea in his voice, the first softness she had heard from him in years, that made the air change, and in that fragile silence, she realized something startling. He wasn't just stunned, he was afraid. Afraid of the answer he already knew. Yours, their voices, their very presence. seemed to pull him deeper into the truth he had avoided for 5 long years. "Mara," he said again, softer. "I didn't know. I didn't understand." She stood slowly, meeting his gaze. "You didn't want to understand," she said, her voice calm but steady. The words were not sharp. They were simply true. Alan's shoulders dropped as if the truth itself carried weight. The silence that followed felt different now, not empty, not cold, but filled with something waiting to unfold. And in that fragile pause, he finally whispered the words he never thought he'd say. "Can I talk to them?" Mara didn't answer right away. The request hung in the cold air, delicate enough to break with the slightest wrong movement. She studied his face, truly studied it, for the first time in years. There was no arrogance now, no carefully built confidence, no polished certainty. Only a man standing in front of a truth he never expected to face. Ember tilted her head, curious. Sky pressed closer to Mara's side, sensing the tension even if she didn't understand it. Mara placed a gentle hand on both their backs, grounding them, grounding herself. She had spent 5 years protecting their world from disappointment. Letting someone step into that world, even for a moment, felt like standing at the edge of something unknown. Alan took a small step forward, then stopped, as if afraid he might cross a boundary he didn't deserve to cross. I just want to say hello," he said quietly. "If you'll allow it." The sincerity in his tone made Mara's chest tighten unexpectedly. She wasn't ready to forgive. She wasn't even ready to understand. But her daughters were watching her, trusting her, and she needed to choose what would keep their hearts steady. She nodded once. Not a yes to the past, only a yes to this moment. Alan knelt slowly, making himself smaller, softer, careful not to frighten the girls. Ember blinked at him, studying him with open curiosity. Sky watched from behind Mara's leg, peeking out like a cautious little bird. "Hi," Alan said gently, offering a small warm smile. I like your snow boots," Ember giggled. Sky's eyes softened. Something shifted. Fragile but real, Mara felt it too. A moment that could change everything. Or change nothing at all. But it was a beginning. Ember's shy laugh lingered in the air, soft and warm against the winter chill. Alan's smile wavered, not from uncertainty this time, but from the overwhelming rush of something he hadn't felt in years. Connection. Real, unfiltered, unexpected connection. Mara watched him closely, her heart steady but alert, knowing that one moment of sweetness could not erase the years that came before. Sky slowly stepped out from behind her, curiosity finally pulling her forward. She didn't speak, but she stared at Alan with the quiet intensity only a child could have, searching, questioning, sensing, and Alan, as if understanding the weight of her silence, lowered his gaze respectfully, meeting her on her level without forcing a single word. Mara felt something shift inside her, something she wasn't ready to name. The past still lived within her, but the sting of it didn't feel as sharp in this moment. Maybe it was the girls. Maybe it was the honesty in Alan's eyes. Maybe it was simply the reality that time had changed them all more than she ever expected. Alan stood slowly, wiping his cold hands against his coat as if grounding himself. "Mara," he began softly, "I know I can't undo anything. I know I stepped away when I should have stepped forward. But if you'll let me, I want to be here now. Not to disrupt your life, just to be part of theirs, even in the smallest way." Mara breathed deeply, her eyes on her daughters rather than him. They were watching her, waiting for her answer. She knelt beside them, brushing her fingers through their hair. In their eyes she saw trust, hope, safety, everything she had fought for. She rose again, her voice steady. "I don't know what the future will look like," she said quietly. "But if you truly want to be here, then start with today. With patience. With consistency. With kindness. Nothing more." Alan nodded, a quiet promise forming in the chill around them, and as they stood together on that snowy street, past behind them, possibilities ahead, it felt less like an ending and more like the fragile beginning of something new. Something they would all write together, one careful step at a time.